And I'm not James Clear, right? I mean, I'm not some of these authors that you're going to hear and that spent 3 years writing Atomic Habits. I'm like, I don't have that. I have a real job.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the show. It's Stuart Bell here, and today joined by Kendall Pouland. Kendall, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Real pleasure. I'm excited as always to share people's stories because I think it just makes it much more real than kind of theoretically people understand that a book is a good thing to have and how useful it is and how they can bring their ideas into something. But it's always good to hear someone's story of how they went through the process. So why don't we get everyone up to speed, share a little bit of how you and the organization, because I like how much you've got your audience dialed in. You're very clear on who you help.
Yeah, that is for sure. So yeah, Kendall Poland. I have over 20 years of experience directly in the construction industry. So I worked for a large general contractor for a long time. And so I worked my way up in the field as a project manager and then into the office in the leadership roles of professional development, tech and innovation. And so really trying to make the whole company better and not just one project at a time. And then I started my company, Build Better Ways, at the beginning of 2022 so that we could help smaller contractors who can't always, have somebody full time with improving their processes. And so we help general contractors and subcontractors, generally in the commercial space, sometimes in residential, with improving technology and standard operating procedures, those and training.
It's always that interesting position. My background is completely different industry, but similar in the sense of coming from big corporate organizations and then moving into the smaller business world. And it's always interesting that kind of assumed language, that baseline of knowledge within a bigger organization, which just doesn't translate because the
Yeah.
small companies just don't know. So how have you found that translating? Because you see the end picture, what it could be, but translating that complete picture into almost the baby steps. Has that been a challenge or?
Yeah, I think even in the smallest companies, they all want it. I think nobody's clueless. They know that they need some of these things and they know that the bigger guys are doing it, but they don't know where to start. And so I think that's what I found the most. And they're willing to start small, right? They know they can't go from, A to Z tomorrow. So they want to figure out how they can start putting some things in place to get them on the right track so that they can scale, and eventually become maybe bigger or maybe just better. So I think it's not that those owners and CEOs are just, head in the sand, clueless by any means. They're all building. I mean, these
Right.
contractors, everybody on the team is building jobs. And so that's what they're really good at. And it would be a huge investment to hire somebody full time, just to focus on that if you've only got 20 employees.
Right. That hitting that right balance of where the biggest return is for those first initial steps and then iterative improvements after that. How do the conversations usually start? I was just talking to someone else before this call and talking about kind of aware, unaware matrix of solution, problem unaware, problem aware, and solution unaware and solution aware. And the people up in the top right who are both solution aware and problem aware kind of know what they need to do. And it's almost like an execution thing. And at the other end, you go from people who don't know that they've got a problem, or if they do know, they don't know what the solutions might be. So how much of it is, you said that most people know that there's a problem at least. How much of it is that they know also what the solution is, but they just don't know how to get there versus they know that there's a problem but they don't know what the solution is?
I think most of them do know there's some problems either now or they are scared to scale, and then there would be problems. Solution aware is probably pretty low. If you just think about technology, now that's not the only solution, but just in technology solutions and construction technology, just Contech, there's 2,500 softwares that do
Like, how
different
many?
things, right? And so how do you expect anybody, to know if you talk about any process, hey, what's the best technology for writing daily reports? Most people aren't going to know every single thing for every single process. So that's really
Right.
tough, right? So they got to pick what is our biggest problem today and then go do some research and figure out the best solution. And so we certainly can help do that, right? One topic at a time. And you kind of touched on it earlier, but continuous improvement is the goal,
Right.
right? Not turn over the tables.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of evolution, not revolution. The idea
Yeah.
that, particularly, I think when organizations are busy, like any idea of trying to make revolutionary change when all the plates need to be kept spinning, it's almost overwhelming because you see the end where you want to get to, but those piecing the steps in place. So is that what a lot of is scoping something appropriately and giving people the feel like there's little pieces of progress? Is that a lot of the work, or is it more they have only got the bandwidth for a little piece, but you need to show them the bigger piece?
So we'll do some work as fully scoped out projects, but what I do for a lot of people is more like a retainer style. And I hate that word because then you think of, like lawyers and
Right.
consultants and stuff like that. But it's just let's do a little bit. We do continuous improvement. We dedicate a certain amount of time every month. And it's no end date, no exact scope. There's some initial goals and some first action items, but then every quarter you reevaluate, right? And you're like, okay, we
Right.
fixed our biggest two problems that we had in the first quarter. And so, hey, this came up. We saw this, we saw people screw this up 3 times last month. I didn't realize it was a problem, but now that I'm aware,
Yeah,
you know,
can share
this
that.
is the problem. And so can we put that, Kendall, can we put that in next quarter's, goal progress tracking?
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? I don't know that there's kind of the fractional word covers some of this now, has a little bit more traction out there than it did before. So we have a similar issue. We're writing books for people as the single scoped piece of work to begin with, but then the clients who we have a longer term relationship with, and like you, coaching really isn't the word, and
Right.
consulting is too ambiguous and nebulous, and it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Like the fractional piece, maybe that's kind of close. But this idea of being there, supporting the person, and we know where the North Star is, what we're trying to get to, but the individual activities are just going to change. It strikes me from our experience, I'm assuming yours is the same, that filling the gap, people know that they don't need a full time person doing this. They know that they've maybe got in house people who can be cross skilled into doing these things,
Right.
but they really need that guidance and that hand holding and some of those first steps put in place. The organizations, the construction organizations who you're working with, are they more used to that model because they're more used to bringing in contractors for individual things or subcontracting stuff out?
I'll touch on the word subcontracting second, but I believe they are used to doing everything in-house. And I
Okay.
was very concerned about that when I started my business because we had no what I call, independent contractors hardly for very specific things here and there. People will outsource IT managed services, but man, that's almost it sometimes. And so they'll
Right.
go find when it's a short term, hey, I know we need to redo our CRM or something. And so they'll create they'll hire somebody to help with website development or whatever. But no, I don't think that is common at all, which is ironic because they subcontract all of their construction work, right? As a general contractor, most companies don't do anything except manage and lead, and the subcontractors, self-performed trades are doing all of the work. So it's kind of an ironic question.
Which is
Everything in the front of house and nothing in the back of house.
right. Which is funny, isn't it? Coming to it as an outsider to the industry, I mean, some broad awareness of what the industry does,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
my assumption would be, knowing how much subcontracting is a thing in the area, in the industry, that even if they didn't realize that your specific discipline was an option, still the idea of subcontracting the back end thing would be less of a jump. But I guess it just goes to show that everyone has their way of working, their silos, and the benefit that you've got with the history is knowing how those people typically work and where the rub points might be. So at least you can kind of step in and bridge with language that makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So that bridging from, they know that they've got a problem, they don't necessarily know what the solution or the fixes are. How, we'll get to the book in a moment, but how in the past have you started those conversations with people? Has that been specifically targeting people on specific problems, or more broadly talking about the solutions and seeing who's interested?
See if there's a way to summarize it because everybody's unique, and they come from different places, and people are currently in a different spot in their business than others. a lot of times what we kind of start off just talking about, hey, what do you do? What is your current process for kind of some of these major pieces, or what are the major pieces of technology that you use? And if the answer is, we use Microsoft Word and Excel for everything. Okay, well, that's definitely going to lead the conversation to
Right.
maybe there are some problems and therefore solutions that you're not even thinking about, right? You don't actually have any data. You just have a bunch of documents.
It's like a big stack of post-its in a digital sense.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's a good question. How much do you have on paper? But right now it's
Right.
usually like, oh, we're all digital. Everything is in Microsoft Word. I'm like, okay, let's go to
One
the next.
step above zero, but there's lots of opportunity here. We can do some fun
That's
things.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's one example. Like I said, everybody's a little bit different, but just like a lot of fractional consultant types. The question is, where do you have the most pain as a leader, right? What's the most frustrating? And, I've heard, I think 2 or 3 times very recently that, our teams have no idea what their project revenue is in the next 6 months. And
Right.
that's our current pain point is I have no idea what my revenue is going to be, 4 months from now. And so, all right, let's find a solution for that.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's such a broad footprint. I think it gives such an opportunity to put the ideas out in the world, to have those bridging ideas out in the world, that there's a pain point here that we can articulate in their language, and there's a bridging conversation towards a solution. And as we kind of make those connections a little bit more, it's not like we're trying to sell one size fits all solution to everyone or a SaaS product that does a particular thing. It's kind of I guess it's a benefit and the curse. It's almost like the paradox of choice of what to be focused on in terms of collecting the next set of clients, because we could do a lot of things for a lot of people. And it almost feels like a scarcity thing of saying, well, I'm just going to go after these people. Although the messaging is then much more dialed in and specific, and it's easier to map out their journey. And it's almost like being a mind reader for what their problems are, because we know where they came in and we can step to the next journey. But it does feel a little bit, well, what about this person and what about this person?
Yeah.
Do you have, with a relatively broad footprint on what you could help with, do you have those same feelings? Like it's difficult to narrow down and really dial in? Although we started by saying that you've got your niche dialed in with
Well, right. I do
commercial
have
construction.
this, and luckily, most construction companies, GCs in that category, they generally have the same processes, right? Because there's some
Mhm.
expectation in the industry that this is how you work. And same with subcontractors, they all have very similar processes in a lot of ways. So that does help for sure. However, I was trying to think. You said something that made me think. There's definitely there's just so many options out there, right?
Right.
I mean, like I said, 2,500 pieces of technology. And so it's like, well, what exactly do you care to see? And so that certainly varies. But there's so much tech out there. It's like, I got to find the right thing for the right person. And it shouldn't be the same for everyone.
Right.
I don't know if
That's
that
the
answers your
interesting
question.
point.
I think I got a little
Yeah.
off track.
No, definitely. I mean, particularly from well, I guess there's one point that we'll loop back to in terms of the outreach to the people, but the solution providing, and as soon as someone raises their hand and you meet with them face to face or
Right.
robot face to face, robot face, but as soon as you kind of there seeing the eyeballs of someone, that having enough bandwidth isn't the right term, but having enough processes or skills or knowledge or understanding or frameworks in mind so that you can not get drawn into the one size fits all with such a 2,500 options.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we need to do to make sure it's the best or most appropriate option based on where we are today? That's definitely an interesting behind the front door dynamic on it differs. So I guess to the other point of the question, and the before the front door, given that it is so broad in the background, I think this is a problem that a lot of people struggle with. It's so broad in the background that when you think about an individual door into the office building, that it's difficult to think about which door we focusing the effort on at the moment. Because if
Yeah.
we try and make the
No, that's
door
for sure.
applicable to everyone, it's very broad. But being narrow and specific, it's difficult. You don't have just one thing.
I think it's easier for companies, for leaders to see that you're the right fit if you're selling the exact thing they need right then.
Right.
right? So one of our services is training on project scheduling. And so a lot of times that will hit home with certain people that is exactly something I didn't think about needing it, but I really do need that. That is definitely so. And so they've heard that and they're like, all right, yes, sign me up. But what if today what they heard from me was our services around talent development? So creating kind of a training plan for it's bigger than that, but creating training plans for our people on how they can grow in their career. If they had heard that today and they didn't need that today, and I think that's where you're going, that like all these things that we're
Yeah.
trying to help with, you got to get in the right door at the right time.
And picking the campaign for now. So it might be that we were talking just at an event the last couple of days that we were running, and there was a coach person there, like a business coach person there, and this was the conversation that they were having. Well, it's pretty broad. It could be this or could be that. People need different things. Like each individual is different, and trying to bridge that into okay, well, we're here today where we are generally, not there specifically, but we're here today in time. You've got 100 units of effort to reach out to something. If you reach out to one unit on 100 things, then exactly the same. Everyone's going to see some diluted message. But if we
Yeah.
say for this period, we're going to pick the one that we're going to put the 100 units of effort into, then as long as we do a reasonable job of deciding if this is a useful group of people, we know that it's maybe this is a 6 month activity, but doubling down and focus on that. Those people who do, it's not going to resonate with everyone, but for the people that it does, it's that mind reader step of this messages. It's almost like Kendall's reading my mind on what our organization needs and the likelihood of being tied in. But it's a challenge up front. I mean, that's
It is
probably
a challenge.
spends the major well, I mean, maybe close to the majority of the time trying to get people to make that gap because everyone, well, not everyone, a lot of us can do multiple things. So to try and get people dialed in. So
Yeah,
that's that
and
one.
trying to find out what is the right thing to focus on, right? I mean, I think there are some of my services that would be really helpful to people, but I haven't quite gotten people to grab hold of it and keep going. And so it's like, all right, I'm either selling it wrong or I'm selling it at the wrong time or I'm selling it to the wrong people or it's not clear. That's hard sometimes when you do all these different things. How do you make it really clear?
Yeah.
Just to say you help with systems is not going to get anybody's attention.
That's I wrote a post a couple of weeks ago on the blog, and the image for it was if you try and talk to everyone, you're actually talking to no one, and
Yes.
kind of the idea of the microphone just broadcasting and it not really going anywhere, but the
Yes.
face-to-face conversation is much more specific. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the book. So it gives a little bit of background on the idea of writing the book in the first place and dialing in. I'm always interested in people's perspective because you can do anything. How do you decide what to include in the book and what not to include in the book? So this kind of beneficial constraints idea. So yeah,
Yeah.
give us a bit of background for the audience. It gives a bit of background.
If I look back real hard, I think this has been on my bucket list for a long time, right? But almost to the point of it felt way too big. Like it would be easier to knock off my bucket list of going to Italy than it would to be writing a book, right? And so wanted to do it, but never felt like it was possible. And then I'm in a Vistage group, which I certainly recommend. And so I've got a lot of other peers and a really great chair. And so I started attending that peer group about 6 months into the business so that I could learn more about all the different roles in being an entrepreneur. And we had one person in my Vistage group who had written a book in the past. I think it's been 10 years now, but it was about website design. And he was highly recommending it to people, right? That not his book, but that people in our group should write a book and how he said, yes, there's a little bit of cost and work that goes into it. And it's not that I've made, and then explained, it's not that I've made money on people buying the book. He said, but I have probably made $1 million in revenue from people who saw that I had the book and then became a client.
Mm.
And so it was like, whoa, I never crossed my mind. And I'm not James Clear, right? I mean, I'm not some of these authors that you're going to hear and that spent 3 years writing Atomic Habits. I'm like, I don't have that. I have a real job.
Right, a real job. Yeah.
So that was part of it. And then my chair heard that conversation and got me in touch with her husband actually, who had worked with you guys before. And so he just completely sold me that it's a lot easier than it sounds, and you don't have to take, 2 or 3 years off of work to write it.
Right. It's so interesting, isn't it? That separation between, and it's funny you mentioned James Clear because the guy who was at the meeting the last couple of days was again using that as the
Oh,
example of if you have book, it has to equals James Clear and some of the other things, and making that separation between the book is the product, which is traditional publishing, what authors do, and the conversation being the product. The conversation is the thing that you really want, but a book is just a very effective way of, and a low pressure and a friendly and informative and value driven way of starting that conversation. I think as soon as you make that switch or realize that there is an option, it's funny being done this for 13, 14 years now. You forget so much. You're doing it every day. You forget so much that the outside world doesn't necessarily see it that way, and it still catches me off guard when I'm having conversations with people, and they have that same light bulb moment of realizing, oh, there is a different. This both of these things are called book, but the job of working with it is actually quite different, and it
yeah.
for us as business owners, it reduces the pressure quite a bit. Sorry, off on a tangent there. So, well,
Yeah, well, I don't think I answered the other half of your question. Now, I talked
right,
a long time about just the first half of your question, which was why I decided to write. So, why I decided to write about this topic, and I cover this a little bit, in the book itself, but we've all been newbies at our jobs at some point, right? And whether you knew generally how to do the job or not, or if you were new completely to what you were doing, so I wrote the book from the people perspective, the human side. It's about standard operating procedures, which does not sound human. It doesn't sound like it's about people, but really it's about making sure if you get onboarded into a company or if you get thrown a whole new role, it's really frustrating if you feel incompetent because you can't do your job. Right? Nobody wants that. I don't think we obviously don't want that for ourselves, but I don't think we want that for our employees either. That you throw them into the job and you can tell them to
right.
do something and then they
Pressure and
suck
stress from
at
day
it.
one.
Yeah. And so I've been in that position. It was a sink or swim, and I'm not throwing stones at anyone. That's how a lot of business is, or they call it on the job training, which sounds nice, but it's not. And so, yeah, I think I was trying to solve that problem. My personal motto, my personal mission statement for me is to faithfully help builders grow. And so helping companies to grow, helping the employees at those construction companies to grow. And I think this topic, standard operating procedures, is one really great way to make that feasible.
Such a perfect introduction to it because the could be taking a slightly dry topic of SOPs and processes and procedures. It's not for me. I love that type of stuff, but for other people, I could see that, particularly if it's not their passion, it seems quite something that they wouldn't choose to pick up. But the bridge, the fact that the organizations require a thing, but the thing is being driven by the humans, and that, capital management is
Yeah.
such a terrible term, but that making sure that the employees are empowered to do the best job possible, are feeling comfortable about it, aren't getting stressed. So bridging the dry solution to the softer, squidgier problem, but it's just a bridge. It's not like the book is
Yeah.
trying to fix all of the problems or tell people step by step exactly what to do. It's just
Right.
taking them in that first step of the journey, giving something valuable, and then, oh, look, here's the next step. If you're ready for the next step, whenever you're ready, we're here to help you with that next piece.
Yeah, for sure. I think for managers, it scares them like that. Yes, we know we need a really great, manual, but that sounds like a huge time investment. And
Mm,
I need my people to be doing their jobs and building buildings and or roads or whatever they build and not writing procedures, And
right.
so I'm trying to convince them A, that it's really important, and B, maybe it's not as hard as it sounds.
That accessible piece, I mean, the idea that as a someone, as we started talking about, the problem aware, but their solution unaware, and that gap is maybe just looking at other, like the James, go back to the book example, like problem aware. I know a book would be good to increase the visibility and the authority and the presence, but solution unaware, thinking that the solution is a traditional $150,000 book in 6 months of waking up at 4 a.m. to
Huh.
create something by candlelight. Bridging that gap for you to go from, hey, we know that better processes and procedures and all of the technology decisions would be good, but I think that the answer is this big thing that I can't even look at. Bringing it down to those bite-sized pieces. I think for most organizations, whether you're a financial advisor or a dentist, like each
Yeah.
of us, and it's easy for us to forget that bridging piece. The people need the first stepping stone towards something, not the overall solution, and not overwhelm, and not trying to route to demonstrate how clever you are to be at this end of the spectrum. It's just friendly holding the people's hands on the first step. And okay, I've got you. Just need to do this step
Yeah.
first, and it's progress.
Yeah. That made me think about, we all have the things that we know and that we're good at, right? And so for Stuart, it's like publishing a book, sure, no problem. And I have a friend, I was hiring an employee and I called my HR friend and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, like what all the
Why?
checklist is of things for my first employee. And she's like, oh, it's really easy. And I said, yeah, of course it is for
For
you.
you, right?
Like, you've done this a billion times in the last
Right.
20 years. And she was like, yeah, but Kendall, there's things that for me, we use a tool called Smartsheet for a lot of things for people. And they're like, oh my God, it would be so cool if it could do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, I can build that, in an hour. And they're like, are you? Yeah, it's easy for me because I've done it a
Right.
lot. Right. And so we
Yeah.
all have those things, which is how business should work, right? Who, not how. And so I think that's just awesome to see.
And it's almost embarrassed, not the right word, but it's the conference we were at the last couple of days. The person who was chairing it was talking, and they were given an example of a marketing campaign that they had done for a company that was, in fact, actually, I think we did a book for them. Anyway, it was about a better smile. In fact, I'm sure we did a book for them. Anyway, so they had a procedure which was, I can lose the details, but some gum refinement issue.
Okay.
So where people have got bigger gums that, I don't know. I'm British, I
Okay.
shouldn't talk about any dental type things. But this gum refinement thing, the person who was chairing the meeting was talking previously. They had all of these campaigns that was talking about the technical stuff and the detail stuff. And it was really quite, we were looking at some of the ad copy, and it was really quite a turn off because it was all technical language. And there was actually a line that says the, whatever the machine was, the Gumerator 5000 causes less bruising and less bleeding. Like that was a benefit. Like less bruising and less bleeding was a good thing.
Oh,
So anyway, the whole wording of it was really bad. So things happened to rewrite it. Th- He was talking about a voicemail from a client who had left, not a testimonial, but was talking to the dentist on a voicemail about how pleased they were afterwards. And the emotion in it, the person was really tearing up on the phone saying that this was a real confidence thing in my professional life. I felt like my
right.
smile was holding me back, and I never thought it was an option because I thought it was a $20,000 procedure, but this has changed my life. And Dean was actually tearing up a little bit talking about it, which sounds
Yeah.
a little bit soppy, but like that real difference. So, like you were saying, not everyone has that experience all the time, but there's those little experiences in all of life. I imagine that you've got a scenario where dealing with a overwhelmed general contractor who knows that they need to do something, and it's kind of just desperately plate spinning, and then you
Yeah.
come in and really make that difference. For you, it's straightforward because you've got that skill, but to be able to bring that to someone, I mean, that really makes a difference. It's not just a
Yeah.
job then.
Yeah, I've had and it was actually a female-owned GC, which is not very common, and it was again, she was problem aware that I know this is something I want, but I feel like I'm gonna have to sit down for 80 hours and, get everything
Right,
and she told me straight up that she was very freaked out about it. It stressed her out, and I know it needs to be done, but I have no idea where to even start. And I'm like, it's fine. I'll do everything.
right.
Just
I've
you
got
got
this.
it.
Okay.
I just need you to show up,
Right,
show up with me for 90 minutes a month or whatever however we worked it out and we'll do it. And so
right,
yeah, that makes life so much easier for business owners who have plenty of plates spinning
right.
that they're trying not to drop.
And all of their domain expertise that could be just focused or tweaked, or the thing that you can bring is your domain expertise, just and everyone listening, their domain expertise, just bring it in and pull the levers a little bit, and it will make a meaningful difference to people's lives. I think that's what it's easy to skip over and think of just the procedural bits and pieces of what we do, the nuts and bolts of it. But when you take a step back and think, okay, if it wasn't for this book is going to make a difference to people's lives because it's getting it in the hands of people, there's an accessible first step. It's not the SOP manual that they could also buy. It's not the all or nothing full contract. It's the first step towards light at
Yeah.
the end of the tunnel. And by bringing it together in this conversational way, by kind of breaking that barrier that you had previously to, okay, if I know I want to do a book, but a book has to be this big thing. Like the fact
Yeah.
that it's done and it's out there and it's conversational and it's the first step on a bigger journey. I mean, it
Yeah.
really moves lifts everything.
No, I
And
mean, no
I love
doubt. I was talking to somebody yesterday who had a copy of my book, and they were like, "Well, how did you?" Sorry, I teach at Texas A&M, and it was a student who had seen the copy, and he was like, "Well, how did you the cover and like how did you get it on Amazon and how did you know to do this?" And all these questions, and I was like, "I can't answer any of those questions." I had a publisher that just did it all and guided me through all of it, and I just showed up. So,
right.
for sure.
And then it's out there. Which
And
is
then
the
it's
main
out.
thing. I mean, we joke a lot of times, like the book is, or not joke, we say a lot of times that the book isn't the product, the conversation is the product, the book is just the mechanism. But it's so easy to get caught up in all of the machinations of the book type thing, which for our purpose, for the purpose of starting the conversation, is almost irrelevant. And then as close as you can get to just one button and push and it's done. Like all of the sidetracked effort and mental baggage in doing this piece over here, it detracts from the real job, which is now it's out there. Let's get it in front of people and start
Yeah.
meaningful conversations.
Yeah. So that's where we're at now.
That's
Trying to
where
get
I'm
it out
well,
there and start those conversations.
yeah.
For
So let's
sure.
talk about that a little bit. So we literally just hot off the press in terms of getting it finished. We were talking last week about the idea of getting it in front of people. Is there going into the project, and now that the project is at the end, and we're talking a little bit more tactical, who are you excited about that first group of people to get it in front of? Was there a group that you were thinking of right from the start, or now that it's done, did that open the kind of mental
Yeah.
doors to who the group is?
So like I mentioned, we do several services. And so, some of that first group is people who we have done other services for, who, we're already friends and hopefully trusted advisors for. But this was not one of the services that we did for them. And so, I think definitely one group that I'm excited about, maybe bringing on to do a little bit more. And then, prospects that I have briefly chatted with at events that, showed some interest in someday doing something somehow, very
Right.
vague. And so, in getting them excited, you mentioned earlier that standard operating procedures, can feel very dull to some people. And so, I think that I totally agree. The visionary of any organization, and for people who are on EOS, they certainly understand that, right? You've got your visionary and you've got your number two person. And so it's like, all right, I can send this to a visionary and they may not care, but they're also not going to throw it away, right? They're going
Mhm.
to give it to their integrator and say, hey, this is what I really want to do, right? Or they're going to give it to their operations manager and say, I don't know why this girl sent this to me. I am never going to read this, but sounds like something we might
But we
really
want
need.
the
And so,
outcome.
hey,
Yeah.
could you take this on for the
Yeah.
organization? So, I think that's a good one. I love people who read. I at least listen to books all the time. And so I
Right.
know if my counterparts in construction companies are readers, then they're going to be interested.
You were describing that. That is one of the things we spend a lot of time talking to people about. The kind of cover title is the most important thing because that's what stops people in their track during the day. And if you without something that engages people, then nothing else gets the opportunity to do its job because it's the first point in that kind of domino chain. But sending it to people who were partially engaged if the time wasn't right for them, or sending them to particularly that visionary type person who isn't the detail orientated person, and this solution is slightly more on the implementer side, But cutting through the noise, receiving a physical book in the mail, that's not something that happens every day. Almost everyone, if you could put a camera floating there, I would imagine almost everyone looks at the front, looks at the back, and looks at the table of contents. And those three pieces do 90% of the job of the book, because the actual content, the words, the minority, it's the, am I even going to do anything with this? The
Yeah.
front. Everyone just flips over because it's natural habit. So the call to action, like a clear next step on the back, which gives that person the idea that, oh, here's the solution is presented to me straight away. And the table of contents, like those stepping stones enough to visually
Right.
reinforce that this is broadly the right area. I'm going to give it to someone rather than chuck it in the trash, or
Yeah.
like who chucks his book in the trash. But anyway, that moving people down that conversational journey faster and more efficiently. Again, the same words on a website or on social media, it just doesn't have the same effect as being brought together on the
Yeah.
pages.
No, you're right. A website's easy to make and it's easy to, send that link out to a bunch of people, but it's one of I don't know how many billions of websites out there and
Mhm.
unless they're going to bookmark you, which is not very likely, they're not going to come see you again.
Yeah.
That also made me think, even if I send it to an organization who has a really good set of standard operating procedures, I would love that they're like, but you know what? I have a buddy who
Right.
just started their company, and this may work for them. I think a lot of us have a copy of Good to Great right on our bookshelves
Well,
somewhere, and maybe it was handed down from somebody,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I know I had a couple books
yeah.
in my company that
English, I don't know how many have copied the English
yeah,
spoken to people over the years. And again,
right.
I think that is a great example, although I mean a traditional book, but that conversational, easy to enter into the idea. I think that was the thing that resonated differently from that book at the time compared with some of the others. It was just much more accessible, which I think is what, I mean, that's really the point that we try to get to on all of our books. It's the accessible. That's the more important bit. You're not trying to demonstrate to someone how clever you are. It's the making them feel like the first point of the conversation. Did I send you, when we spoke last week, did I send you a copy of the Secret Psychology of Why People Refer
I
you've
don't think so.
bought? I'll send that to you afterwards. And for everyone listening, just so they don't feel like they're left out, I'll put it in the show notes as well. So this is a something that Dean wrote years ago. It's called The Secret Psychology of Why People Refer. We've got a couple of different versions of it. I'll probably attach the financial advisor version. It was actually written for the purpose of another program that we've got called the World's Most Interesting Postcard, which is a physical postcard mailing program. So the report was written for that purpose. But the ideas behind it are talking about the secret psychology of referrals. And everyone thinks about referrals as we do a good job, we ask for referrals. If people feel like we did a good job, they'll refer. But the underlying psychology of referrals isn't that at all. It isn't being asked to do something and then someone doing you a favor by referring. It's that their social standing is elevated by giving their friend the thing that helped them, like making the restaurant recommendation. Oh, you've got to try Gino's. It's the best place around. And the next time you see people, oh, did you try it? Did you try? Oh, it's the best, isn't it? Did you get Mary? Oh, she's the best. So that psychological difference, a book reinforces all that and makes it easier because it's a physical thing that has a high perceived societal value that enables someone to share that in a way that doesn't feel like you're asking for a favor. They feel good about it. Everyone, it's value all the way down the chain. So I'll send you a copy of when we got off the call, but I'll put it in the show notes for everyone else who's listening in as well. But that element is, it reinforces perfectly what you said, because people are keen to be the people that help their friends resolve the problem. And this is a mechanism to help facilitate that.
Yeah, I shared that with somebody after we talked, so it definitely resonated with me. I also probably read somewhere that I should know where, but I don't remember, that if you ask somebody for a small favor, nothing big, but like, "Hey, can I borrow a pen?" or, "Can you give me a sheet of your paper?" or whatever, they are more likely to like you, even though you are literally asking for something. It's
Oh,
what
that's interesting.
it's another piece of like, kind of a psychology thing that they'll be more willing to, be part of your world if you ask them for help.
I guess it's that you're giving them the opportunity to provide more value and feel more
Yeah.
important or useful in society.
Yeah.
I think, right, no, exactly. Yeah. And particularly, I guess, when and not wanting to derail the conversation too much, but particularly when you think about anything that is community or purpose based, the people who are on board with you on the train, the kind of,
Mhm.
we've identified the problem that there's all of these roll-ups going on with contracting companies and private equity coming in, and this kind of machine is trying to take up. We're here to make sure that the, what are the right languages, but the mom and pop stores are keeping the lights on by utilizing some of these tactics that they use for efficiency. We're passionate about making sure that this gets in the hands of all of the organizations so that you can keep the independent fight going. Obviously trying to like layer on a little bit of the emotion there, but asking someone to, hey, we've got this copy of this book, we really think it makes a difference. If you and talking to some of the people that you're talking to and they're struggling with these things, just let us know. We'll get a copy of the book to give to them. Like, you're not asking for, you're asking to spread the message. You're not asking them to open up their, I was going to say Rolodex, but that might they, their phone book and sacrifice some of their friends' email and phone numbers
Yeah.
to help you out. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not even making their friends talk to me because they're
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes
Exactly.
I feel,
Exactly.
weird making an introduction because it's like, oh God, I'm gonna sick that person on them, even though I know they're great. And I think it'll
Right.
be a really great conversation, or I never would have made the introduction in the first place. Their first thought may be, oh God, I don't want to talk to another
And they're
salesperson.
going to feel obliged to you, and you've got that.
Yeah.
Even with, like you say, even with the person you know is the very best, and
Mhm.
you would love to have him round for dinner, and you'd have no qualms about that, but still sacrificing someone else's details and then being out of the loop completely, knowing that there's some commercial intent in that conversation, even when we're
Yeah.
100, well, 99% on board, there's still that little bit of hold off, which again is another reason for why a book is a fantastic tool for that mechanism, because you're just delivering value
Yeah. And it's
without
totally up
that
to them.
overhead.
Right
Yeah.
now, it's completely
Yeah.
up to you if this is helpful and you want to take it to another step.
Yeah, exactly. It's become a meme. I always finish the podcast by kind of looking up in the corner of the computer and realizing that we've been talking forever and I'm monopolizing your time. So I would say how quickly time goes. It'd be great to circle back in a couple of months and then maybe do a follow-up show and share some
Okay.
people as it's got out there and the message is spreading and you've got some examples of how it's being used. And
Yeah.
the one thing I'm always interested, or one of the things I'm always interested in, is now that it's out there, the feedback that you get
Yeah.
and what types of conversations start and how the trajectories you look for today kind of pivot slightly in response to this thing that's happening.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking forward to that too.
yeah,
The only feedback I've gotten so far, and again, this is very new, right? But is two different people have said, "Oh my God, it sounds like you." Like I can, a buddy of mine in my old company, he said, "Kendall, I can hear your voice saying this stuff. Like
right.
I'm literally hearing that, even though it's not on Audible, I'm hearing you in my ear." So it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
Which is perfect. I mean, we definitely try and do that. And that's one of the things we're really keen to do. But it's sometimes it's difficult because do get through a recording to some words through editing, it can get lost a
right.
little bit. But because the job of work is starting a conversation, so now when someone gets it, someone you don't know gets a copy of the book, reads those words, and then jumps on a call with you, that
Feeling friends.
familiarity that they've got, yeah, it just oils the wheels a little bit, as
Yeah.
opposed to someone who ghostwrites something academically, and then someone gets on the phone and there's just no connection there at all. It's just raw facts and a random voice joining it
Yeah.
together like this.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I
that's
was
great to
really
hear.
glad to hear that from both of them. They're not, neither one of them are buyers, and that's fine. Don't expect either of them to be. I just, and one of them's she's a graduate student at A&M, and she was like, she's going through it slowly because she's in school, but she was like, I absolutely hear you in this.
That's so funny.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. But that's perfect. I mean, that's a big check in the box that it's landing, the tone is landing right. And when people do eventually jump on the call with you, that marrying together is just going to
Yeah.
gel the feel of the conversation.
Yeah, that's true. I'm listening to a book by Jordan Rayner right now, and it would be crazy if I just hopped on a call with him. It would be like, oh, we're old friends, even though he's never heard
Right.
of me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I know everything about you.
Right. With podcasts, I listen to a number of podcasts, but you hear people on there and it's a weird experience that you know them way more than,
Right.
than
Yeah,
don't know you.
that's
Um,
interesting. Mhm.
one last anecdote before we wrap. There was Paul Ross who wrote the tiny little book called My Damn Toe Hurts. He's a podiatrist up in the northeast. So he's written 3 or 4 books on individual conditions. So this one, My Damn Toe Hurts, we did a podcast last year sometime and we were talking about it. And he said there was a guy came in for the first consultation, was in the chair, and Paul's kind of down at his foot and manipulating all this, and they're kind of talking back and forth a little bit. And like 10 minutes in, the guy says, "Oh my God, I just realized you're Paul, you're the guy that wrote the book. That's why I'm here." And he had kind of like this, I don't know if starstruck's quite the right word, but it was definitely, Paul was saying it was definitely there was a definite shift in the tone of credibility or friendliness or
Right.
feeling of connection once the guy realized that he was the actual guy that he'd read and the reason that he was there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice that it all connects together.
Famous podiatrist, I guess.
Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. For anyone with dodgy toes, every time I tell the story, because it always sticks out in my mind, so I do tell the story quite a lot. I always do this and say whatever the condition is, because I always forget to look up whatever condition makes your toe hurt. So one of these days I'll close the leaf and
Dodgy is the condition. Yeah.
right, right, yeah, yeah. Okay, it's been fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. I want to make sure that people can follow along with what you're doing. And obviously, if anyone is in the construction world, anywhere across the country, really, that they should check out what you're doing. So, what's a good place for people to go and find out
Yeah.
more?
So probably the best is LinkedIn. It's Kendall Poland. So I know you're going to include a link. My website is buildbetterways.com. And then the book is on Amazon. So,
Perfect. Perfect.
mhm.
I've put links to all of those again in the podcast player and on the website. So, people don't need to
Okay. We're on
be
we're
taking
on
notes, just
Facebook and
click straight
YouTube
through.
as well. So Build Better Ways is the company site for both of those. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time, Kendall. Everyone, thanks for listening in again. If you've got any questions about your own book and ideas of connecting to the audience, then just either hit up the website or hit reply to the email that we'll send out with this. And looking forward to working with everyone in the future.
Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.